Okay, thank you. Tony Campano just gave us the cue there. Thanks for coming out, Tony. This is
on his lunch break.
Tony. Wednesday, February 2nd. It is a nasty, icy night.
Brutal day.
It's a long, hard winter we've been having.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate that we get the people to come out. In fact, before I thank the crew, I want to thank Kimberly Davis Parker, who had to come out and travel. She's an employee of Cablevision, okay?
Had to come from Newark.
Yeah,
came out back and drive all the way home.
Got a long trip from here that came out. And certainly Tony Campano on camera number 2.
Tony.
And Joe Gizzy from
Joe
About Our Town.
About Our Town.
Number 1.
We're going to get something out of it.
Juan Sambate, thanks Juan for coming all the way in from
Best director
and stuff to
right after school.
And
the biggest honors we got, Harvey L. Smith.
Harvey L. Smith.
Harvey Smith.
I knew that was it. And the exonerated.
And I learned that the L stands for Leonard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Recently. Now, Senator Smith, Assemblyman Smith, Mayor Smith, Councilman Smith, Council President Smith.
Yes.
You've been on our show a couple of times before.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I enjoyed every minute here with you.
Okay. And I saw you recently. You were on trial in Newark.
Yes.
And I came out to see it because, frankly, because I had the time to see it. 2 reasons. I had the time to come see it. And the other thing is I wanted to see for myself because when I read things in the paper, I find very often it's not the same thing that I'm looking at.
You're right, and a lot was left out. A lot of things that transpired were left out. And before we go on, I'd like to say thank you for having me. It's good to see you too, Coach.
I love you guys.
I love being a public servant and serving the city of Bayonne. And I have to say that I miss my former aide and the late Bruce Bigg. He served the city well as senior director at the Senior Center on 54th Street.
My buddy used to call me ESPN Junior. I refereed with him for years.
Yeah. Bruce Bigg at 56th Street. They turned the old water pump station into a senior.
And Harvey did a lot of parties down there for the seniors. People.
Great man. He always, I always had an opportunity to go in, work with the seniors, listen at what they had to say, and help them wherever I could.
Okay. I think my wife's aunt used to be an aide to you, too, Elaine Bettino.
Okay. She helped out quite a bit.
She's into it.
Quite a bit, yeah.
I want to say, but we will talk a little off the air, Harvey. I just want you to say what you told me, because it really meant something right to me just now, hearing you saying it. The difference that you took yourself as the difference between a politician and a public servant. You considered yourself your whole career public service. Maybe you could just tell her.
Well, I was a public servant, so I didn't do well with the political end of it because I believe that people elected me to serve them, to be their representative, and to listen to them. And that's what I did, and I tried to the best of my ability to represent what they wanted because the public, and a lot of times people forget that the public put you in office and they take you out of office. And I want to be recognized for my public service as opposed to the politics of it. I think that politics is a negative word, but for me, public service.
Most people would consider it backdoor deals, like they made that bogus Operation Big Rig or whatever it was. And I think that Lou hit it on the head, that the governor and the timing and the plot, if you read into Lou Manzo and his brother on trial too, but he believed, his belief was what I read, that Cristie staged this to happen to win that election.
Well, probably that's the overall picture, but
that's his opinion. That was his
well, that's my opinion too, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. I'm going to also comment on some other things. There's I think there was 44 people swept up.
46, 47.
Among them, admittedly, in my opinion, among them were a couple of crooks. There's a couple guys that they snagged up in there. I'm going to tell you one that I think John Guarini, in my opinion,
I know who that guy is. He's a Bayonne guy.
A small-time guy, but a big crook. But there was other people that I did not know who they were, was not familiar with them, and then there was a couple people that I did know and you were one of them, and Lou Manzo was another one, and I said, these two guys didn't take any bribes. There's no way.
These guys are the most honest guys we've ever met.
I called you up about 2 days after the arrest.
Yes. And, you know, it was one of the most devastating periods in my life. I spent a lot of time soul-searching, wondering how this was all going to end, the problems it put...
The stress on the family,
stress on my family, my whole family and my friends and people. You know, when you get caught up in a situation like I was caught up in Big Rig, especially when you're not doing what they alleged you to do.
Okay. The politician,
wait a second.
Public servant.
When you say caught up, there's a few people got caught up. Some people got caught up in the sense that they got tempted and they did something wrong. You... And I watched this play out in court. These guys tried to get you. You wouldn't go along. They tried some more. You wouldn't go along. They tried, and part of it is you had two guys, Jack Shaw and Ed Cheatham, were working for Dweck. They were getting paid by Dweck.
Yes.
The only way that he would keep paying them is if they found politicians that would take bribes.
Right. Take the bait.
So it was never on tape, and you were taped like for hours and hours.
Right.
Okay. But anything that you allegedly did wrong was never on tape.
No.
It was Cheatham and Shaw coming back going, yeah, he took care of it.
Well, you know, there's other tapes that weren't given to us that show that they had, I believe they had a list. Yes, and they had a list. And after the first tape where he gave $5,000 to Richard Green to give to me. I told Mr. Green that I didn't want cash and I couldn't accept cash. He never told me what was in the envelope.
Right.
When I got back to the office and found out it was cash, I called up Mr. Cheatham and I had him come and get it. And I had a few choice words to share with him. But I didn't see them again until 3.5 months later.
After the election was over.
After the election was over. So it tended to make me feel, and it bore itself out in further tapes that are out there that came up where Dweck was insisting on coming back to me. And so now that we know what we know Dweck was driven by what the government pushed.
Well, was trying to bait. They were trying to get guys. They were grasping.
They were in a hurry to get you because there was a day, I think it was a Friday, that would be their last chance because you were going on vacation.
Right.
On Saturday. You were going on vacation in Virginia. And if they didn't hurry up and do this, they would miss their chance.
Well, even deeper than that. See, that's why I'm pointing out these 3 tapes that we were never given, and then we found out later on. Cheatham and Shaw didn't want to come back to me because of all the things I shared with them, not doing any quid pro quos, not wanting cash. I wasn't the type of person that they could work with, and obviously they felt it was a waste of time. Let's go on to something else. But Dweck kept pushing the issue
because the
to come back,
government needed a legit
and they needed
guy.
to have people come back.
A legit power guy, a guy that did his job. And I mean the hats, all the hats you wore. But the most impressive thing that I read in the Star Ledger was that when all this stuff was going on, you were making calls to the DEPA and all these other things to see if this was legit and what it was going to need, and if this was a real thing. You were already starting.
Yeah, I was looking into what was happening and where it was. And then on the day that I found out, after Cheatham threw the envelope in my vehicle, I didn't know until then that it was illegitimate.
Oh, by the way, let's go back to that day, too, okay? Because the first couple of meetings where there was any talk about money, you were running for mayor. You were on campaign, and you expected possibly to get a campaign contribution.
Yeah.
In fact, you
that's what I came
You thought
for.
Richard Green was giving you a campaign contribution, and you thought it was checks.
Right.
You found out it was cashed, got rid of it, gave it back to Cheatham.
Right.
Okay. The day that Cheatham tossed that envelope in your car with the $10,000 in it, you weren't running for anything.
No, I wasn't.
You weren't looking for donations. You weren't certainly weren't looking for bribes.
No.
You had, in fact, you were still the Assemblyman.
Right.
But you had not run in the primary. The primary was over. You were finishing out your term. That was it. You weren't looking for any. When you sat down with those guys at the diner to report to them what you knew, which they insisted that you come to the diner that day.
Well, they called me all day. It started on the...
But I noticed that what was on tape, when you showed up there, these guys had been there a couple hours.
Yes, they were.
And they go, you want something to eat? You want something to drink? No, I'm just... Like, you're just going to tell them what you're going to tell them and leave. Okay? And you're pulling out of the thing, out of the driveway, and here comes Cheatham, okay? But my point is, this wasn't even anything to be confused with anything. It's not like you were campaigning for anything. You weren't looking for donations and whatever. And I'm sorry that I'm going on about this, but like I learned all these things from watching the trial that most people don't know. The prosecution had to know, even though they
did know.
Even though they were pursuing this thing, they knew.
Harvey said the tapes that they had.
But
that would exonerate him, they held, and that's why they kept me.
This is very troubling to me. This is not the America, you know, that we should. This is, and even as I'm saying this, if anybody's watching this, there's people out there that do not believe what I'm saying right now. They do not believe that what they did could
they're
possibly
entitled
be the
to their
case.
opinion.
Well,
you know what I mean? And if I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it.
But you're exactly right. I didn't believe that anyone would pursue me to the depths that they did to make sure that it was in my possession. Irrespective of everything that happened, I was not coming there looking for anything. I didn't want to come. It was 3 months after the election, after the initial thing, and I felt like I had cleared the air.
They needed a big fish, a big name.
What I was trying to do is to just give them the information I found. I told them that, look.
Okay, wait. First of all, you were being a public servant, okay?
You were researching everything they wanted.
Because these people had questions that you could get the answers to.
Yes.
And you did and went and got the answers. And the prosecution tried to use that. In fact, the girl goes, quid with the, what do you call it? The
envelope. Yes.
Right. Oh,
the
yeah, the envelope of money. Pro quo and the placemat where you wrote down the questions you were at. Like,
see, I was writing.
She had to know that didn't add up to anything.
See, but here's what happened. I went there. They were supposed to give me plans, and I kept asking. If you remember all the tapes, I'm asking, "Where's the plans? Let me see what you have. I want to see what you have on paper." Oh, we'll give it to Ed. He'll give it to you. I'm referring to Ed because Ed was my deputy mayor. He knew how I was. He knew that I wasn't looking for any cash. I was only looking to deal with the merits of the project to change an area of Jersey City that was contaminated and toxic and not have it be spewed over into the community.
And you were working on that. You already were making the phone calls to see what process it would take if it could possibly be done.
Well, I wanted to make sure, Coach, that the property was in the name that they gave me. I found out that it wasn't. So I came back because they kept saying there was so much verbiage.
You caught on to them right away.
And then I said, listen, you don't have a project. The guy was so silly. Dweck was so silly, and I couldn't see Cheatham and Shaw, veterans that thing, dealing with them into what they were doing. So I shared the information that I found, and I was out. I said, that's it. And I was doing it because I thought
it was
Cheatham
legit.
and Shaw were friends, and it was a legitimate project. Thinking they didn't know, and this guy was just
trying to rough front shot over them.